So becoming a founder means that you need to be very responsible for the business end to end. And nobody's going to give you vacation days or give you times off or give you any insurance. Right? Everything is on your own.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Top of the Hunt. Today, we've got Shan with us, who's created Listen2.AI. He's got an incredible backstory with a lot of diverse experience, ranging from working with big tech through to now starting his own startup. So, without further ado, I'll pass you over to Shan and ask him to introduce himself. Hello, Shan.
Hi, Taran. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for inviting me. Hi, everybody who is listening. Very nice to meet you. So I'm Shan Huang. I'm the CEO of a company called Forma Cloud, and our main product is called Listen2.AI, which you can find in the App Store. I'm currently in Palo Alto, Bay Area, USA. So my company's name is Forma Cloud, and then we recently built a news podcast app called Listen2.AI. So this app is basically an app that enables you to absorb information from all around the world, which has a lot of topics for you to listen to. So it's really good for you if you are driving or when you are exercising or when you are maybe doing your housework. So when your hands cannot touch the phone and you still want to continuously ingest information all around the world, this is the app.
So, what gave you this idea?
So it came from my father who already passed away 16 years ago. But my father, when he was young, he spent 10 years in prison in China just due to political reasons. And that was in the crazy Cultural Revolution time. After the Cultural Revolution, he came out of prison and he started finding a job. He ended up working for the government, for the party, and he became a newspaper editor and reporter journalist in a local newspaper. So that was the environment I grew up with. My father taught me how the propaganda is working and how to use the true information to tell lies, how to manipulate people's mind. I learned a lot from what he told me, but news was not my main interest. I grew up being a computer software engineer. So I started programming when I was in the third grade elementary school. So almost 30 years of programming. I'm still programming today. So I didn't want to do news. Okay, I'm a software engineer. Why am I doing news? So that has been my goal. However, recently I have been thinking about how we can combine my skills and news together. How can we disrupt the current news industry? I entered the best university in China, Tsinghua University. I was the Chinese chess champion when I entered the university, and I served in the school team. So I got my bachelor and master's degree from Tsinghua University. And by the way, during my master time, I at that time we play a game called StarCraft, and I was the school captain. So I led the team to compete with other universities. I was even the commentator in the national competitions. But it's just my hobby. So I came to the United States in 2006, and I started working on my PhD at Buffalo State University of New York. During my PhD time, I spent some time working with the local government to help the local people. To be specific, I worked with the government of New York Upstate in the Niagara Falls region and also the Ontario government. So what I did at that time was to create a traveler information system that enables the residents to subscribe to the local traffic information, the delays. I don't know if you know, but between the US and Canada, in the Toronto area, there are three bridges on the border, and there will be different latency, different travel delays just due to the traffic condition and maybe all kinds of unexpected things. So people can choose one of them to travel, but if they choose the wrong one, there will be a unnecessary delay. So people can subscribe using cell phone text message. So it was in 2008 when Twitter was not popular yet. I created a system, it served the local community. So that's why the New York Upstate government just gave me an award called the Young Transportation Professional of the Year in 2009. And my project actually was selected to be the prestigious project of the year in 2009. So that was me helping the local people. And just a fun fact, the system is still working today, serving the residents. It's called a Mind 9 Tech. MYNITTEC. You can Google it. So that was my PhD time. And I had been working on intelligent transportation systems, especially on autonomous driving, and a lot of simulation, a lot of traffic control and algorithm during that time. But after my graduation, I went to Chicago to work for a supply chain startup as a senior researcher for 3 years. But during those 3 years, I was very dissatisfied, just because I felt that I was not doing the latest tech. Because in Chicago, it's a great place to live, but it's not a great place for technology. So in 2014, I came to the Silicon Valley. I started working for Google. At that time, Google was a dream to me. It's not Google today, but 10 years ago. So I worked for the video backend team, and I created a file system that greatly reduced the cost of the video processing pipeline. And it saved Google like millions of dollars per quarter, which is great. And afterwards, I went to LinkedIn. I worked as a software engineer on front end and back end, basically a full stack. And then afterwards, I went to Facebook. Today is Meta, but at that time it's Facebook. I also work on delivering models to machines, and I worked on detecting fake accounts in Facebook. And afterwards, I think this is very personal, but I wanted to, since the day I came to the Silicon Valley, I have been dreaming of creating my own successful company. When I was at Facebook, I was having trouble. I mean, mentally, I was having trouble because I don't know what to do next. If I continue working in the company, I can climb the ladder slowly, but that's not my goal. So I really want to have my own business, but I don't know what to do. So I consulted a friend from Greylock. He's an investor, and then he told me that I definitely someday you will have your own company, but at this moment you don't have experience, and this is really really hard. So what about you join some company like that are going to be successful and you learn from them? So I said yes, but where are those companies? So he introduced me to multiple startups in the Silicon Valley, and they are all very good. And the one I ended up joining was called Cresta, which is an NLP company, natural language processing company. You can Google Cresta, Cresta. The reason I joined Cresta was I talked to a very renowned person, Sebastian Strong, who is a Stanford professor in AI, also the founder of Udacity, founder of Google X. So he convinced me that this company has a great future and the direction is good. And it proved to be right, because today Cresta is already a unicorn, valued more than $1.6 billion. And I was the first founding engineer joining. And after Cresta, I went to another company also funded by Andreessen Horowitz. The name is Acasa. It works on medical automation or healthcare automation. So that's a computer vision company. And I worked there as the lead of infrastructure and security and IT. And then I was invited by my friend, Andre Esteva, to be the founding VP of engineering of his new startup, Altera AI. And Altera AI is a great company. So what it does is it provides diagnostic suggestions for cancer doctors, for oncologists to understand what's the best treatment options for cancer patients. And that's also a computer vision company. And Altera got a very high valuation in its seed round. I think it's setting a record in Silicon Valley, because I don't know if you have heard another company that was valued $400 million in a seed. Yeah, that's very high. So these are successful companies I joined. And I thought it's about time to create my own company. So I founded Forma Cloud. And Forma Cloud, in the beginning, it was not on consumers. It was a business-facing company working on AWS cost optimization. But we picked the wrong track. And then long story short, it didn't work well. So that's why we pivoted to a new direction, which is Listen2.AI. And that's the history. If we think about Uber, before Uber, we need to have professional drivers driving the cars for us in the taxi. Mm-hmm. But with Uber, the people, everybody can become a driver. Similarly, before iPhone, before those cameras became very cheap, only the photographers can take photographs. But now everybody can do that. And I believe tons of them, almost everybody in my family is a good photographer. They are so good. So the power of productivity have been released from the common people. And what I want to build is an Uber for news. So in the news industry, there are a lot of intermediate steps between the source of news and the destination of news, which is the audience or the readers. So when after something happens, there will be a journalist collecting the news, but they have to get approval from their editor about if they can write something about that or not. Once they get approval, they will have to do background search. They have to start writing, and then there will be back and forth between the journalists and the editors. And afterwards, they have to find the layout, allocate the space and time, and then they also have to get approvals from for example, intelligence property review and legal review. And then sometime when there is available space, they will be published. So a lot of intermediate steps, they are necessary today. I would say they are necessary, but they can be replaced by the AI. So my goal is just directly connecting the information source and the audience. And every step in between will be Gen AI. So that's the whole vision. That's something I want to build. I want to disrupt the news industry. I want to build a trustworthy media that's unbiased and high quality and real time that can be competitive with the biggest news media today. But it's a very big vision. It's really hard to do that as a startup. So we pick something that's relatively easy, which is news podcast or news radio. That's Listen2.AI. And as of today, what we are doing now is very simple. So we scrape information from more than 80,000 global news sources, and they are all credible. And after scraping the sources, we use AI to rank them to find the most attractive ones. And then we keep the fact from the original news written, but we discard all the opinions, all the personal opinions by the journalists. And then we rewrite it in different versions using Gen AI. For example, for political news related to US politics, we write in 3 different perspectives, left, middle, and right. And then we write in different languages. We can write as many languages as we want, but currently we support English and Chinese because these are the 2 biggest languages in the world. And then we also write different versions, like a concise version, which is like a 2-minute summary. We write an in-depth version, which is maybe 8 to 9 minutes with a lot of in-depth analysis, like jargons, related to historical events, and maybe prediction of the future, which are more in-depth. We are also rolling out a new feature. It's called a roundtable, which has one host and multiple guests sitting together, debating, interacting on a certain topic. So that would be a fun thing to listen to. And that's the app we have built. And we have 7 channels in the app. We have politics, entertainment, sports, science, health, business, and AI technology. And the app is free, so everybody can listen to it. But we do have the last 3 channels as premium. And everybody, if you want to use it, you can just spend a very low monthly subscription fee, and you can use it. So that can help us. If you subscribe to that, you can help us improve our product. Eventually, you are benefiting yourself.
You've got an interesting journey. Obviously, the origins from your dad working in the news and the way in China is something very few people, I think, can properly relate to. You know, who's had a difficult time in life, but perhaps not 10 years in jail for a political opinion. You know, it seems completely alien to somebody from the UK, and I imagine most of the people in America would feel the same way, and then unless they've had similar experiences from different countries. And I can see how you're now in a position to say, unfortunately, died, but you're now in a position to say to him, or would have been, this is how we now help solve that problem that you had with misinformation, disinformation, and presenting a lot of propaganda to the world. So it's a good way to do things. And I think it's so far working for some of the biggest companies in the world and then some of the fastest growing companies in the world, I can imagine it's taught you a lot of lessons. And obviously you've had with Forma Cloud your first experience of doing something and it not going so well, which often is more valuable than the successes, because you'd seen things work, you try to emulate them, and then you see, but actually this didn't work. And perhaps the things that we done wrong, were we naive, or did we, work too much assumptions? Was there emotion, perhaps? What was it that wrong in there? And I think that's personal reflection is incredibly important. It's a fantastic journey. I think to listen to it's structured it in the way in which it's stripping back the news. Because I think one of the things in today's world, it's very divisive along political lines in particular. Before you know it, people on the left are blaming Trump for the recent crash in Baltimore with the boat and the bridge, whereas people on the right might be blaming Joe Biden. And it turns out it was the captain's fault because he fell asleep at the wheel or something. And those, I think it's incredibly important, as you say, to strip back to the fact of, no, this thing happened, this is the reason why, and then, as you say, for longer form content, which I suppose would be similar to an Economist type article read, or perhaps the Financial Times in the UK, where you've got more in-depth analysis of things. And I think that could be incredibly important, because it might turn out that the ship he was on should have been retired 25 years ago, and the bridge was supposed to get rebuilt and it didn't. In the way in which perhaps there was because of old engineering tactics or engineering ways of building things, and that they've made mistakes. So I think those things are, especially when you're coming up for the political cycles, incredibly important to strip out. And as you say, the last three categories were business, AI, and what was the third one, sorry?
Health.
Health. So I think for those now, it's I spend often with the news and listening to it, trying to catch up with it. But there's a couple of websites I go to which are similar in proposition. So one of them in the UK is News Now. I think they do it in America as well. And that seems to be okay, for quick digestible, and then you can click through and read it. But it doesn't give you any type of summary on top of that. And on top of that as well, you've got sometimes a blog will form their news, and they'll talk about something like it's news and it's not, it's opinion. And then you're reading it and you're thinking, well, this is just opinion, which it might be perfectly valid. I'm not saying that the person's intentionally deceiving, but they've created content that you otherwise wouldn't have read because it's not what you clicked on to read. So I think, a few of those AI in there difference to people. And then the ability to say, look, this is the left view, this is the centrist view, and this is the right view, especially, as I say, for politics, hopefully has a lot more people saying, okay, I'm very, why do people like Donald Trump? And they click and they read the right side news, or vice versa. They say, I'm a MAGA Republican, or whatever the term is for it. I'm going to click on the left and see why they like Joe Biden. And then eventually people can start to have a conversation about things, instead of thinking, look, we're splitting tribes that never want to discuss things. Because I think that's one of the things with the news, with it being so divisive, people very rarely change their opinion. And Joe Biden might be right about 75% of things, and Donald Trump might be right about 75%, but they're both wrong about 25% then, which neither party will ever agree to. So if he's made mistakes, you should hold them accountable, whichever one it is. So it's a fantastic splitting it through. And I think that the longer term vision for sort of changing things are published and have it in an Uber type view, that I'd never really thought was possible. Look at sort of Twitter X a while ago. They some people have reported news quite frequently, sort of short articles and other things. And I know that there's somebody local to me who sometimes reports like traffic accidents and things, where to run through propagating through the proper systems and the channels as they're established, I can imagine is an unnecessary process. So I suppose from there's a foundation to build out the rest of it. So it is being the Uber. How would that work for people? So would that mean you and I were both sat in, the accident was in Baltimore, was it we're both sat opposite sides of the river? We can both upload a picture, we can both give a short comment. How would that work for people?
That's a great question, and I'm very excited right now to answer this question, because there will be a solution. So I'm forecasting this solution as Uber for news, and then for the bridge news, how it works is, you can imagine people will be starting reporting, and there will be more than one person. Right? So I can get a picture, you get a picture. somebody may be writing something. And we can use AI to aggregate the information. By aggregating the information, we can eliminate the false information, because if somebody takes a photo somewhere else and submit it to this news, or just submit it just claiming to be related, we can use AI to filter out. We can find the majority, and from the majority, we can find the truth. And another important thing for Uber for news is that everybody, they have the reputation. We will build a reputation system or level system. So when you start reporting, maybe you get lower weight. But if you have done this for 100 times, 1,000 times, we know that you are credible, more credible than others, right? So we can combine this together. The AI can process massive amount of information and aggregate them, so the user will get the most accurate information. So that's the exciting part. We are not going to rely on one single person.
It's an interesting way of doing it, and I suppose it, as long as your AI doesn't have a bias, so everybody submits conservative news, and then your AI is so liberal, as I saw from your article today. It's something that you need to make sure doesn't happen, because it has to be fair and true, doesn't it? You can't have an AI with an opinion.
That's totally true. I think our AI is working like this. So AI basically it learns and compresses the information that it was fed. So a lot of times we give a lot of, maybe we feed more liberal information to the AI will become more liberal, right? If we feed more conservative information, it will become more conservative. But as a lot of mainstream media at this moment is they are leaning to the left. So I guess as a result, most of the credible data we found, they are more on the left side. So I think this is expected. But what I didn't expect before this blog post was that we have been doing things on both parties' side, on liberal side and conservative side. And the instructions we give to the AI, especially OpenAI GPT-4 turbo model, is almost symmetric. For example, I would tell you to do this on the liberal perspective, and then do this on the conservative perspective. And the liberal work gets always gets smoothly, no error. It can always be executed well. But on the conservative side, it always tell me, sorry, I cannot do that. Sorry, I cannot accomplish this task. And it's not very reproducible, because if we ask it to retry, it can work. So what we have been doing until now is that we adding a lot of retries on the conservative side, because it's, could you do this for me? And if not, try to do it again and again. So basically on the conservative side, more retries. Liberal side, no retry at all. So that's something we have found. So we have the workaround, which is retry, more retries. So it seems that it's not like something cannot be done. It's just they refuse to do this just very often. So this is actually an alarming message, because if our AI is the most popular AI in the world is refusing to do something on one side, that definitely, I think there may be a lot of consequences. Like what happens if this is urgent? What happens if the task, like we really need the task to be done? What if the person doesn't know how to retry? They will think this is impossible. So basically a tool, if the tool, AI is a tool, if the tool has a political bias, that's not good for the people.
Is that applicable to other models, or have you not tested it as much yet?
So we are going to test. We haven't been testing other models yet. So personally, well, internally, we have been using, we tried using Cloud 3. And Cloud 3, to be honest, it seems to be outsmarting the GPT-4 model as of today. We compared a small amount of samples, and it's writing better news. However, as of today, just because the amount of resources we have, we're still sticking to GPT-4, but we are open to do the testing. But I'm not sure about the results. So I couldn't say on behalf of other models right now.
Okay, because it's interesting. I know that there was a few things that Google got a little bit of backlash for. There was, I
Yeah.
saw my NJ, my co-founder, she was showing me that a lot of the Nazis were black, and there was the founding fathers were all black. Now she's black, and she was like, it would be awesome if it were true for the founding fathers, but it's historically inaccurate. And I suppose that they're trying to introduce some representation into different sort of backgrounds, whether that be for gender, race, or whatever their objectives might be. But obviously, when something's historical, you expect it to be historically accurate. So I can see, even just from their example, on a very limited scale, that for a set period of time, their instructions were incredibly wrong, which is very scary because later on it might be a lot more subtle. And as you say, that there's potential issues with the AI and the bias of what goes in. So I saw as well that the Google, I think it was Google, wanted to train all of their AI on Reddit. Is that's what they wanted to do? I've had a Reddit account for about 14 months, and from my experience in the marketing related subreddits and other places where I tend to frequent, the majority of the advice given is not very good. There's a handful of people any given time you would go there who have professional opinions that you read and you might disagree with, but they're still professional opinions that have credibility to it. Whereas there's other opinions in there where it's somebody who may be 16 years old and is very naive and is given this very verbose, seemingly credible advice about something that, quite frankly, just shouldn't be applicable. So if they were to train on that, I can imagine in due time that Google itself and the advice that their models would give would be very poor unless they were able to caveat that information on the way in. But I don't know how the training side works, but I can't imagine you want to filter out half of your training just because it's an incredible source. And then obviously if you miss a lot, then what happens? It's a big problem, I think, in the future, AI that may mislead people. So I'm glad you're looking to address that, at least in the news for now, and then obviously further publishing and round and about, so people can have, at least if there is a bias, they can be let known there is one. Because I think that's the worst part, when you don't realise somebody's opinion is in error, and then you've followed on from their mistake. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting product, and I think you're solving a massive problem that a lot of people don't realise exists today. The quality of the news that they're reading and the opinions they're forming. So from there, you've released it onto Product Hunt, and you came the fifth product of the day. So how did it feel doing so?
Before we talk about product hunt, I want to wind back a little bit, rewind a little bit to
Okay.
talk about the problem you mentioned about Google. I really don't want to directly comment on that because Google is such a big company.
Yeah, yeah. In a
We are just
forum player.
that. But I would say I'll tell you some more stories. So my dad's biggest wish when he was alive was to come to the United States, but he died of lung cancer before he could do so.
I'm sorry.
So I ended up taking his cremation to the U.S. and he's buried in Chicago because he never came to the United States. So he told me the United States is such a great place and everything would be different. I believed and I came. But I think if he is still alive, if has he can see, he can hear what you just heard. If he sees what's happening in the US, maybe he would change his mind. Because US is not perfect either. No place is perfect. There are a lot of things we need to work on. Every country has its issue. Like the news industry in the US definitely has a lot of issues. So that's one. Another thing I want to comment on is for the model training. This is a very important point that you mentioned. Last week, I attended an event which which invited the Dr. or Professor Fei Li, a famous AI scientist, to make the speech. So I listened to the whole presentation, the whole interview, and one thing really caught my ears, which is the ability to train models outside the big companies. Because she mentioned, even in the United States, if you do a research, if you are doing research in the big universities like Stanford, they don't have the ability to train ChatGPT 3.5 just because they don't have enough computing power. So a lot of companies, only those companies with enough GPUs can train the models. Universities cannot. Normal people cannot. So there's a monopoly here, and we need to address. I think this, if it is the truth if that's the fact in the U.S., it's the fact in other places too. So just we need to enable everybody, especially the the academia to train their own models.
How would they go about doing that? Would that be through Web3 technologies or?
I think the government, the people, they should invest more on this infrastructure. We should be able to, at least we should prioritize the universities, because a lot of talents, they are from the universities and they represent the future. If we rely on companies who are not open, who claim to be open but not open, it's very dangerous. Who
Mhm.
knows what happens in those companies? Back to the product hunt, I was really proud that we were able to get number 5, just one spot above Grok, the Grok model. So this is really good. I'm very proud of that, and I got a lot of support from people around me. A lot of founders that they like my product. That's why they upvoted for me.
Mhm.
So that was a great opportunity to expose ourselves to the industry, and I'm very happy about the outcome.
It's a good achievement, and I think to have beaten Grok, obviously there's other companies as well. Any given day there might be 100 products released or more. So it's to get in the top 10 is a fantastic achievement, but to get into the top 5, I think it is something a lot of companies would strive for. And you've achieved that. And was it your first release or second time you've been there?
It's our first release on Product Hunt.
Yeah. So it's when you say it's your first release and then you come on for the first time. Like some of the companies I've seen, for example, Right Sonic was on last week, and I was speaking to somebody who was trying to fight with them, and they were, as I said, fight with them. His philosophy that there was no battle, but obviously from there, Right Sonic, they've released 6 times. Do you know? So when somebody's released 6 times, they've built up a community. They've got other people following them, and they get notified again. So automatically, on the morning of their second release, it should do better than the first, and so on and so forth. So by the time you get to the sixth, it should be relatively easy
Yes.
to get at least to a base level vote of top 10. So obviously, there's still work to do. So it's really well achieved, and for you and a small team. How many people on your team?
At this moment, we have myself doing the coding. We also have one full-time engineer who just finished working here. And then I think we spent 35 days. Our team, 3 people. If you can't count ahead, it's 4 people, but 2 of them are part-time. So
Okay.
if we do the weighted calculation, it's 3, 4 times. So we spend 35 days from agreeing on this idea on January 31st to delivering that to the App Store on March 6th. So I'm quite proud of that because this end-to-end from scratch into production.
It's a fantastic achievement. I suppose a lot of your background has been able to give you insights on how to do that quickly and run a team and everything. So it's fantastic. So from there, is Product Hunt going to be part of your early validation stroke go to market activities? Is this a plan?
We got a lot of traffic from Product Hunt, yes. The Product Hunt traffic is high, but it's temporary because after you don't have activity and there's less traffic. We are still getting a lot of traffic from other locations. So we have a lot of visitors and we know where the visitors are referred from, and we're happy about our current channels. But at the same time, we want to just continue to work on our product to make sure we can serve the audience better. I want to just reply to something that you mentioned earlier, which is there are similar kind of news that today that you can from where you can see like the latest topics, like the hot topics headlines. But we are different. I just want to mention that there are 3 main differences. Okay, so the first difference here is we are audible. So we are not a website for you to use mouse to click. We are not a application for you to use your finger to browse. Instead, we are just something that you listen to and you don't have to use your hands. So that means we are a perfect application in a circumstances when you don't have your hands on the phone. For example, when you are driving, when you are working out, when you are doing your housework, or when you are about to sleep. So you don't want to touch your phone, and then you can continuously listen to high quality real-time news. So that's where we excel. So the second thing here is we are multilingual. So we support different languages, but no matter which language you choose, you hear the same content. So this eliminates the language barrier among people. So that's another very good feature of ours. Then the third thing here, as you already mentioned and people already heard, is our political slider. So we allow people to choose your perspective. But there's a logic behind that. It's not just a random design. So since 2016, we have been hearing this polarization in news, and people have been trying to deal with that. So there are two main approaches. Approach one is to silence the other side. So I speak, you don't speak, I win. And this doesn't work. And the other approach is just we get close to each other. I give up a little bit, you give up a little bit, so we are closer. But this doesn't work either, so for obvious reasons. So our philosophy here is totally different. I think people should hear from each other, and but at the same time we should respect what they think. So I don't want to teach you what you should think. It's your choice. At the
Mhm.
same time, you can have very easy access, very instant, easy access to my views. So if you want to hear me, you can do it. Otherwise, you just hear what you like to hear. So provide more varieties in the news. And that's also the reason why we are releasing the roundtable feature. Because in the roundtable feature, what you are going to listen to is debate. So you directly hear ideas from different sides and you make your choice. There's no need to force anyone to win or lose, but you hear multi-perspective news. So yeah, you're not going to be fooled by the propaganda.
So for the round table, is that going to be two AI voices speaking to each other, or will that be humans?
So still AI voices. We don't have human doing the
Fantastic.
narration, but we are going to generate hundreds of debates per day, and on different perspectives. And of course, everybody who speaks is AI voice.
Are you using something like DeepGram for that, or are you going to be using OpenAI's?
So we are no longer using OpenAI for our English voices. We're using 11 Labs, which has a much better quality. So I do think
Okay.
their voice quality is great. For the Chinese version, we are currently struggling finding a good quality one. So we are using OpenAI and also using Aliyun, a Chinese vendor. They are far worse than the English version. If anyone can provide a better, like a industrial level, industrial quality text to speech engine, please let me know. I really appreciate.
I hope somebody can. It is very interesting. Obviously, 100 debates a day or more, perhaps. It's a very interesting way to go about things. I think sometimes that is the core issue, isn't it? You would need to listen to have a debate in a similar sense, maybe half an hour of CNN where they're talking about the same subject that they're talking about on Fox. And it's not really a debate, it's just two opinions blasted without any idea of
That's right.
any sort of discussion. So it would be very interesting to hear that, especially I think some things in and around business news. I think would be very interesting. It's where we were perhaps talking about some of these latest models and how they've came along, and then the debate of what the way in which it should be trained. Should it be open source? Should it be governmental? Should it be how should these things be improved? It would be very interesting. I
Yes,
think
we are trying to use AI to find the debate topics. We're not going to do debate on everything.
yeah.
However, I'm very surprised because a lot of topics that AI picked, when I look at the news, I didn't even realize there could be debate on this. But the AI was able to point out different opinions, different aspects. When I heard, I actually learned a lot. So other than politics, right? Politics, there will be debate. But even on AI tech, on business, there's always debate. Like on health, people were debating on COVID-19 and for example, new vaccines. And then on AI technology, people were debate on like Neuralink, and is it good or not, right? So a lot of fun topics that I never thought will be involved in the debate. Now I can hear the debate on that. So it's very insightful. I enjoy listening to it every day.
That's fantastic. So, obviously, if somebody was to be using the app, they've listened to some when they're at the gym, then they've listened to some on their daily commute. So they could be using your app for maybe 2 to 3 hours per day.
That's true. So we are currently doing a lot of rounds of news scanning per day. So as of today, we are mainly targeting the US people. So
Mhm.
we do 6 rounds of news reporting per day. So whenever you open the app, I think you are basically there are two rounds for the morning, one for the East Coast, one for the Pacific Coast. Basically, around 6 a.m. in the morning, you should have one batch ready. Then there's another batch before you in the noon. There's another batch in the afternoon. So basically, whenever you are driving, when you after you get out of your work, you will be able to be recharged by the information from our app. So I enjoy that every day. So really happy about it.
I think you've been your first customer from the sound of things. Was this idea developed and validated internally, or did you do much external validation?
So when I created this app, I learned from a lot of other entrepreneurs that you never build a product without seeing the customers. So even
Mm,
before building these customers, I talked to 20 people about it, and I described to them what this app would be looking like, and they all gave me very positive feedback. So that's why I was convinced. And even after the product was released, I'm still doing the customer research every day, sending out emails to customers who had registered to ask for their opinions. So we
mhm,
got a tremendous amount of support. So I'm so excited. So yesterday, I updated our website to add 5 testimonials from people who are very good, like elites from their different industries. There are investors, there are CEOs, there are very like genius software engineers and just business people, real estate broker. So they are from different industries, and they are testifying that they like our product. And if you go to our website, you can see what they say, and you can validate who they are.
yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Barring somebody who's to be chauffeur driven, you don't have much opportunity to scroll when traveling. I suppose if you're on public transport or chauffeur driven would be the only two opportunities. But if you're driving yourself, then you're in a position where listening to the news on the radio would be the only option. And by the time you were to add in adverts and you were to add in somebody's opinion, you might end up with effectively 10 to 15 minutes of actual facts per hour or something. It would be interesting to know just how little facts you actually receive, but I can't imagine it's all that productive. It's
Yes.
a good way to solve that problem.
Yes. I also want to share some details of our app to you. I think this people may not know this before they try it, but after you try, you will know. So as you can imagine, our first version is we have just one type of script, and we only have one narrator, one reporter. So people have been telling me that they can listen to one, maybe two, and then they are bored because it's the same voice, same
Mm-hmm.
pace. So that's why we started to introduce more reporters. So we very carefully found the best voices that we could find in different genders and in different accents. So you will hear reporter one talking about one thing, and afterwards it will be another reporter. So you are not going to get bored. It's much harder to get bored. And another fun thing that you will notice that is that we are reporting global headlines, meaning that some of them are in the US and some of them may be in Europe or in Asia or in Australia, like in the islands. So we currently have different accents. So if the news is from Europe, we'll have British accent doing the reporting. If
Yeah.
it's from Pakistan, from India, we'll have Indian accent doing reporting,
Mm-hmm.
and otherwise it will be the US accent. We may be adding the Australian accent sometime. So I haven't been doing that just because I don't feel the difference. As a foreigner, as a non-native speaker, I couldn't feel the difference between Australian and American accents. So I lower the priority of that, but I believe somebody can. So this is there are a lot of very small designs like this just to make sure we have a good quality that can serve our audience.
So will people be able to choose to change? So I like one. So can I say actually I'm happy to listen to him 70% of the time or that type of thing?
I wish I could because this requires resources. If we have resources, we can do it. And
Okay.
also to mention that different reporters in our system, they not only sound different, they also write differently. So
Right.
everybody has
Okay.
a different news reporter style. So we ask the AI to emulate different but famous reporters' writing style. So
Mhm.
when you hear somebody talking, if you hear the person talking for a long time, you will immediately realize that this is different.
I can see how that works. It's when I was first using chat, I think Ada was still alive and an active model then. So I was a little bit of an early adopter for a marketer. And I think it was before 3.5 was released. Maybe not. Maybe early 3.5. But either which way, quite early on, and before they became world famous. And I can remember one of the first things I asked it to do was give me some copywriting. Because if you say you do language as a marketer, I'm not particularly great at copywriting, which I should improve on, but it's just something I've never particularly liked. But I know some people who are wonderful at it, and they always do things that's embarrassingly good to mine. And I thought, let's test it to see how good it is. So I typed, can you sound, say, David Ogilvy, who was Ogilvy, the agency, was he created it, and he was very famous for copywriting. But what a lot of people don't know about him is he wrote a very early sales manifesto for a company called Aga Stoves. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. So they're old stoves. If you have a look on Rightmove, you can find them on the internet. But if you have a look on Rightmove and you look at a lot of older houses, it's like a Zillow or a Trulia for the UK. A lot of the old houses, they'll advertise an Arga stove as a feature because it's an original one still installed. But he wrote the sales manual for that. So I asked them the chat to do it, and it done a really good job. There was a few things that was nowhere near what he would have written, but as I say, they've done okay. So I can see the value in having 5, 6, 7, 10 reporters, perhaps however many you're going to have, and the diverse. If it's the short form news content, are they going to be writing a bit like the Indie 100 in the UK? If it's longer form, is it going to be like the Financial Times or the Economist or another publication? So it'll be an interesting way for it to unfold and to see it.
Just please try it. Everybody who is listening to this, watching this, please give it a try. And you can, if you can find out which news reporter we are emulating, just let me know, and you'll get a surprise. You'll get a surprising bonus, surprising reward. I promise you.
A little Easter egg. It's a good way of doing things. To move on from your launch and everything, so is your plan now to work on validation a bit more and continue to bootstrap, or are you going to be going down the route of tapping into some of your VC connections and saying, it's time you invest in me and we're going to be the next unicorn?
So at this moment, I haven't proactively reached out to investors, but I did get some proactively reach out from them. So I'm talking to them. I am still trying to focus on marketing. So I want to explain to you the reason. So at this moment, we have the end-to-end flow working, meaning that we got organic users, and we get them sign up, we get them use our app, and then we get them paying. So every step is we pass through. So this means the whole thing is working. But we are trying to get tons of users because we believe if people can understand what we are doing, there's no reason that they wouldn't try. And there's also no reason that they wouldn't benefit from our product. So my current goal is just to do the marketing to let more people know about us. So that's our main goal. And I believe with the number of more users gained, fundraising is not a big problem.
Okay. So with regards to marketing then, have you thought about much of how you're going to go about doing it, or is it still early stage, let's figure this out?
So before this week is early stage. Starting this week, I have been trying to connecting to, for example, individuals, talented entrepreneurs who are specialized on marketing. I also connect to agencies to ask for their help, and a lot of them. So I'm trying to filter out which are the best ones. And I think early next week, we will start our effort on marketing. So we have a lot of things to do on marketing. And at this moment, as you already know, our team only have engineers. How can engineers do marketing? But this is going to be changed because now, starting this week, I'm no longer a software engineer. My focus is on marketing. So I started wearing the CEO hat again.
It's interesting because I know from our co-founder, he's anti-social. Not in the fact he won't talk to people, but social media, marketing, and other things he's not particularly a fan of. But funnily enough, yesterday he said, I'm going to start creating some content. He'd watched a couple of our videos and he says, I didn't think marketing would be is interesting. I said, I have been telling you for a long time, but never mind. I think one of the things that I think would be interesting for you to try out would be to put your articles in different forms straight onto YouTube and other places.
That's right.
Do you know, and that would be a good way potentially for you to get some traffic and traction from there, because it's, if somebody was to be interested in some latest news, obviously that if they're already searching, well, wherever they're searching, so if they're searching in Google or if they're searching in Bing, the objective for you is to be the first source. But if they're searching in YouTube, often, as you know, if I was to go onto Fox or CNN's channel, there might be a 6, 7, 8 hour delay from the news being live to the news being onto the platform, onto YouTube specifically. So from there, I suppose there might have been about a 24-hour delay based on what you've said. From they're saying we want to discuss this story, and then eventually it gets onto the show at night time, and then eventually it gets on to YouTube. It would be a good way for you to demonstrate how quick your tool can be, especially if you're beating them to the punch every single time.
Totally, totally. And I also agree to what you just said in the beginning, like your co-founder is very introverted. I'm introverted also, so I totally understand what he's thinking about, because personally, I don't like meeting people, especially meeting strangers. It takes a lot of courage for me to do so. I'm getting better these years after becoming the CEO. But if you met me 2 years ago, it would be totally different. But still, in my heart, I feel uncomfortable talking to people who I'm not very familiar with. And I think this is a problem for a CEO. But there are good people who can do this much, much better. And I'm looking for people who can help us, any kind of people who can help us. And I believe if you are on a good mission, like what I am on, we can talk. Because if you just let me repeat that, because we talked about that in the beginning, that we want to build an Uber for news. And it's when we talk about Uber for news, it's actually not news. It's information from the source to destination, and we
Mhm.
just make we replace the intermediate steps. So this is actually very exciting vision from my perspective. If you think about that, we can create an information network in the world to make sure everybody can hear what they want to hear, and we deliver high quality instead of becoming the monopoly. This is something that nobody has done before, right? This is a really exciting thing to me. And then if you feel this exciting too, so please contact me.
Yeah, I hope people reach out, because it's a big problem, and obviously your dad lived the experience of how bad it can get for a different opinion, and obviously we don't want that in the Western world. The vision that he had for America, and I suppose that can be roughly applied to the UK because we have similar principles with the cancel culture that came around and other things of both political persuasions, and then every viewpoint in between shouldn't be there in the same extent. So I think if somebody has your outlook on the world, then they should certainly reach out. It's a very interesting problem to solve. So from there, is there anything else you'd like to add or discuss?
So I think I do have something that I want to consult you. So when we talk about marketing, I think our platform is really good. Our application has a lot of good attributes, making marketing relatively easier because we are a news app. And then we have AI, which is the trend. But we have a problem that we are audio only in the app. And in order to do marketing, we need to have good videos. So we need to convert audio to videos, which is something that engineers are not good at. So if you were me, how would you convert these audios to attractive videos?
So you've got the risk of saying, first off, use an AI character, but I'm not sure how many people are interested yet in the uncanny valley, because it's something when I see it, and I'll accept and watch it because like I know this is going to be the future of how things go, and I know from there, obviously that's one thing, but you need to be careful of that side. The other part you could do video presentations that was going to do text to image and have slider type videos. An alternative could be waveforms. Now, if you were to have and you were to only promote the shorter articles, so it would be the very brief opinion pieces that might be 30 to 45 seconds, less than a minute, definitely, that with a waveform could be enough to be interesting, especially if the tagline hit straight away. And then from there, it would be, for example, a waveform with an image like for the Baltimore Bridge, for example, so people could visually see what was going on, perhaps a little bit of news footage directly from the source for those types of things, but you need to have other people aggregate that content first. But initially, I would say to test a few things, but the Uncanny Valley, I can imagine one's expensive, and two, I don't know how many people would accept it yet across the board. But then certainly to look at, as I say, the text to image in a carousel type presentation could be an interesting way for the medium length. But then for the short form, I would be looking at waveforms which are not particularly difficult to, so all it'd be is a waveform with a visual representation of the voice that's speaking, so that can at least be visually interesting without it being massively complicated. But
Thank you.
outside of that, it would be to turn it to video. There's not many other options, I don't think, unfortunately. You could try to do things, but I think for somebody who's trying to stay lean, obviously your objective is to spread information out there. It would be the waveforms. I think would be the first thing I would test, because I think that would be the most cost-effective way to do.
Thank you. That's very good idea. I think we should definitely try it.
From there, I would say one of the best ways for you to perhaps to go about early traction for Listen to would be to look at using your insights with regards to the bias in AI as a springboard for PR, and perhaps, really you might have to go for counseling when you're finished, but contact some local, if not national, news outlets who have been suspecting that there's a bias. And then you're able to discuss that, yes, there is a bias, and this is how you can counteract that bias. So obviously we've got the tool, but this is some of the lessons that from the backstory from your dad. I think in particular those who are of a conservative and right-leaning political persuasion are more attuned to the idea that communism can be very bad. So they would be more interested in listening to you initially than perhaps some of the liberal news that socialism can be good. And there's a limited, like the spread between where it stops being good to starts to becoming bad is quite a blurred line for a lot of people. But I think if you were to, for example, look at local Fox or local, perhaps even the national Fox News or other Newsmax and other places like those, and then talking about your insights into AI models and how that impacts the way in which the AI models are presented. And then obviously what you're doing is presenting an option for people to listen to something different. Because one of the things that you're now doing, I suppose, you don't necessarily have to be at competition with other news outlets. As you've mentioned, you're potentially able to work in partnership with them. So it might even be a great way for you to speak to a Newsmax or other right-leaning outlets and say to them, look, this is what we're able to do as a platform. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. You would now be able to come out and perhaps you could A/B test certain subjects you wanted to report on. So this would be a good way for you to validate what tonight's headline news show is going to have in its content, because you've tested it early in the morning. And that could be, perhaps you could say to them, we're able to set this up so this would go to a limited set of users. So there's not much of a chance of this early news going viral, but we can now test it for you to see if it's going to work. And I think if you were to do that, obviously you've coupled in potentially customer discovery calls with larger outlets who potentially you could be saving them a lot of time, money and effort on reporting the news. And then obviously from there, you're able to tap into some of their audience who would be interested in what you're delivering to them.
Thank you. Great answer. So I really appreciate the help you have offered to me. So you gave me a lot of insights about this. I think I'm thinking about that. Yeah, I think I have some plan. Thank you.
No, fantastic. It's because I think obviously one of the things for marketing, and I had a conversation. I do some pro bono work consulting with small charities, And I was working with one for Discovery Call last week, and she was like, "Oh, our product's so confusing, this, that, and the other." And it is, but it's not. And I said, so one of the key things that we need to do initially is look at your target customer and blow it up completely. So we need to look at what all of the versions can be of your target customer. For you, it's who listens to the news, who goes to the gym, who commutes, who does all of these things that people might be interested in. And then on the flip side, you've got your business to business, where you're saying who produces news, who would like to produce news, who might want to, like Walmart, for example, they might be interested in having some news that goes out to their staff, and right now they've got no way of doing it on a national basis. Like, expand your target customer all the way out as far as you can, and then say, then we're going to test this niche, because our hypothesis is we think these ones might work, and eventually you'll find one that does work. Once you've tested it, then you can spend more time going into them, and then later on you can say, with more time and resources, we're going to expand our operations back out to those other ones, and then eventually you've got a mass market product. So I think that's the key way I'd look at this now. And it's not necessarily who's got the biggest pain, because I think for in particular the news, a lot of the people who have the biggest pain don't realize they've got it yet, because they're so biased in their perspective that they wouldn't accept. I love Donald Trump, but he might be wrong frequently. Again, he might be wrong frequently. Are you going to accept all of the mistakes he's made? And they probably won't. So it might be using the political news on subreddits and other places to be a way to generate things, releasing some of your articles in there as short forms, because you would be permitted to do so. Or there's some subreddits for world news where you can put one article, for example. So it might be an article from the BBC, and as soon as this subject's discussed in that subreddit, no one else is allowed to post another article from that particular news stream. But you're in a position where, technically speaking, you could be first every time. So you could control parts of that narrative. But for that, you would probably need to have some text-based articles on your website, perhaps, so people could do. But it would be a good way to be first in, because I think that's one of the key things you have. You can be first. Second, the next point would be you can also demonstrate your value to people with the ability to say, this is either short or this is long, this is up to you, this is news the way you want it, and it's at your convenience, and it's at whatever political persuasion you want to have or want to avoid.
Totally. Uh, I think this is a very good suggestion. I really like your advice. Thank you again.
Oh, you're very welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to add or discuss, or any other questions?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for this opportunity. And if in the future we are growing, if we grew to a better stage, I will be happy to come here and share what I have learned to you again.
Oh, I'd love to have you back on. I suppose one thing I would like to ask is, obviously you've got an extensive background in big tech, and then startups, and then your own startup, and you've in a way done the textbook journey. You've learned your dues in the big time companies, and then you've moved into smaller ones, and then how they work. And now you're on your own journey. Is there anything that you could advise somebody else, or that perhaps you would have changed on your journey, from where you started to where you are, should somebody want to be starting a business?
So I would say working for big companies is very easy. So they have so-called work-life balance, meaning that you get time to do whatever you want after the work, outside the work. And working in startup is much harder because your time is mostly consumed by the work. There's endless amount of work. However, becoming the founder is even harder than working in a startup, because you will become more and more lonely. Just because most people in the world, they like to work for somebody else. I don't know why, but they like to work for somebody else, or they don't like working for somebody else, but they choose to work for somebody else. So becoming a founder means that you need to be very responsible for the business end to end, and nobody's going to give you vacation days or give you times off or give you any insurance. Right? Everything is on your own. So it's not only the difficulty, like financial difficulty or the difficulty on business, it's also the difficulty communicating to others, like your family, your friends. because they would not, most of them will not understand you. So this is a very difficult journey, especially when you are still struggling for success. So I just want to give people, make sure if you want to be a founder, please be prepared, mentally be prepared. And I also want to say, if you can have your family, like your loved ones supporting you, this is a great sign. For example, for my family, my wife really supports me. And then she told me that you need to try. She encouraged me to try things. And she said, if you don't do that this year, you will regret when you are getting older. So I really appreciate her help here. And every day I remember this. When I think about the support from her, I feel I get more strength. So this is great. But I can imagine that this is not happening everywhere. So if your family doesn't support you on doing a startup, it can be even harder than when you imagined. So I just want to give people warnings, and please pick the right time, pick the right thing to do, and do it incrementally. Start with small things.
Okay, that's a wonderful advice, and I'm glad your wife's very supportive because I can imagine it's a massive difference when she's saying you used to work for one of the world's biggest companies and we had a steady income, and now you've said I'm going to go and work more hours. I'm going to go and do 100, so I don't have to work 40 anymore, and I'm not getting paid anywhere near what I used to. So I can imagine it's a scary proposition if she's thinking is he going to pursue this journey too long? And I don't think you're going to be led by emotion. So she'll know you well enough to know, look, it's been on his heart for a long time, so let him go and do it. But it's fantastic. She's supportive. So the last thing I suppose would be for Product Hunt. You're going to go back. Are you going to do things differently next time? What would you change?
So
Or
if I were going
launching
back,
again?
yeah, if I launch that again, I probably will find I probably will find another day, because that Monday we have more than 200 products launched, so that makes things harder. So I don't know which day of the week is better. I don't know which month is better. But if I'm going to do that next time, I will find a better time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna because
Mm.
that puts you. You've made the top 2.5%. Do you
Mm.
know? So it's a testimony to um, the product and the early indications of some product market fit.
Yeah. But next time, if Elon Musk release something, I would choose a different day.
Yeah. Did you know he was going to release on the same day as you did?
I didn't know.
No. But maybe you should message him and say, Elon, I'm sorry to tell you, but Grok got beat by a startup, and let them come and listen to the news release of
That's
your
a
success over his. Obviously, it's tongue in cheek, and as you know, on the day, it's about who's got the best products, and people might have already been using Grok and other things. So, but anyway, other than that, there's nothing else you'd like to add or discuss. So I think it's time for us to wrap up. We'll call it a day for now, and then perhaps in about 6 months' time, or whenever you feel you're ready to come back on, you've overcame any negative thoughts and feelings on the way home from today. Come back on, and we would love to speak to you again and for you to share more insights. And I hope Listen to it does really well, and a lot of people can start to use it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for your time interviewing me.
Thank you very much for yours. Have
Okay.
a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day too.
Okay.
Bye.